I'm going to read a little bit more of this because to me, I mean, the whole thing is, if you want to read it, I mean, the whole thing is extremely troubling. But to me, the most troubling part of his manifesto is ridiculous. He says it's not personal. This isn't personal. And actually, the Hispanic community was not my target before I read The Great Replacement. This manifesto will cover the political and economic reasons behind this attack, my expectations of what response this will generate. In short, America is rotting from the inside out, and peaceful means to stop this seem to be nearly impossible. The inconvenient truth is that our leaders, both Democrats and Republicans, have been failing us for decades. They are either complacent or involved in one of the biggest betrayals of the American public in our history, the takeover of the United States government by unchecked corporations. I could write a 10-page essay on all the damage these corporations have caused, but here's what's important. Due to the death of the baby boomers, the increasingly anti-immigrant rhetoric of the right, and the ever-increasing Hispanic population, America soon will become a one-party state. The Democratic Party will own America, and they know it. They have already begun the transition by pandering heavily to the Hispanic voting bloc in the first Democratic debate. They intend to use open borders, free health care for illegals, citizenship, and more to enact a political coup by importing and then legalizing millions of new voters. With policies like these, the Hispanic support for Democrats will likely become nearly unanimous in the future. The heavy Hispanic population in Texas will make us a Democratic stronghold. Losing Texas and a few other states with heavy Hispanic population to the Democrats is all it would take for them to win nearly every presidential election. Although the Republican Party is terrible, many factions within the Republican Party are pro-corporation. Pro-corporation equals pro-immigration. But some factions within the Republican Party don't prioritize corporations over our future. So the Democrats are nearly unanimous with their support of immigrations, while the Republicans are divided over it. At least with the Republicans, the process of mass immigration and citizenship can be greatly reduced. The psychopaths' hate creed is what comes next. But before that, my apologies, I didn't get this loaded before. I want to show you this chart before I read the next part of this. Right here is the wage growth of America versus productivity since 1950. You've all seen this before. You see how in 1980, it was the wage growth was climbing in the 50s, steady growth of wages. Man. About 1980, it totally flattens to the point where it started going down, went up, going up, but this is not a chart, that red line, that shows healthy, or organic, sustainable, and livable wage growth for a nation, especially a nation of now almost 330 million people. We see on the blue line that productivity, beginning in 1980, skyrocketing. So as productivity has skyrocketed, wages are essentially flat. What began, and let's start a little earlier than 1970. You can't see it, but I'm pointing right here, about 1975. What began in the mid-1970s? I'm sure a lot of you know this. In the mid-1970s, they started peeling away at campaign finance laws. This was long before Citizens United. So the rules on how much money corporations could donate to politicians started changing. Before the super PACs, there was just political action committees. Political action committees started. Modern day lobbying started. The great documentary, Get Me Roger Stone, explains a lot of this.
He's the one that started the super PACs, where they would they would like raise money to do campaign ads. It would be for the president, but it wouldn't be sponsored by the president. So it'd be in his favor, but not sponsored for them. And right. Him, the guy that just went to jail for Trump, Manafort, and another guy started this super PAC company. They're the first ones to do it.
So all of this started in the mid 1970s. At the same time, unions were being busted beginning in the late 1970s, and that busting in the mid 1970s, Reagan took that and just doubled and tripled that union busting. You remember the air control workers, the air traffickers.
Yeah, air traffickers.
That he fired. So you got busting unions. You have...
Oh, you're talking about Reagan.
Yeah.
When they had... Yeah, for sure.
You have busting unions. You have corporations, plutocrats, moneyed interests starting to buy off Congress. Sure, in the past, politicians got donations sometimes, but not to the level of the 1970s and then in the 1980s. What else did you have? NAFTA in the 90s. But there were trade deals that began in the 80s that aren't as talked about. But trade deals started in, more in the 1970s, 1980s, and then you had NAFTA. So,
because 1970s, they started closing a lot of the plants and everything. That's why a lot of people that had moved to LA became like in dire need. Like California was in bankruptcy. Like in the 70s is when Nixon started changing everything. It's like right after he changed the gold standard and took that deal with Saudi Arabia.
And by the way, let's not forget that in this wage productivity and wage growth, redlining of African American communities, which obviously, this is wages for all Americans, but wages for African Americans, if they had another line, it would be even worse because of the redlining, the racist housing and mortgages.
The unions didn't have black people. It took a while to try to get black people even in the unions that were for the people. That was just for white people for the longest.
So I want to show you the corresponding chart with this. Here you have, you've seen it before. Beginning in 1980, skyrocketing wealth for the 1%. Mm-hmm. Just total collapse for the bottom 50%.
That's crazy. Oh.
The two things that these charts have to do with are what I just said.
Ronald Reagan.
You have campaign finance rules being peeled away. You have union busting. You have trade deals. You have redlining.
Deregulation. Definitely Reagan was part of that.
And by the way, it started under Reagan. It all continued under Bill Clinton. It continued under George Bush. It continued under President Obama. President Obama had the added obstacle of being black, but also, could have been a Great Depression. But
yeah.
Barack Obama was pushing trade deals like the TPP. Barack Obama didn't do anything for unions. Barack Obama didn't do anything to change, as far as I know, redlining. It's still going on. We just interviewed someone in Detroit that was talking about how bad the redlining is there. Yeah. So why I'm bringing this?
You can go to Detroit, you can go to Chicago, and you can see it. It's evident. Like it's a lot of gerrymandering in Chicago, but you can see where black people live in versus where you see the residue. I don't want to say residue because it's still going on, but you see redlining just by going to the neighborhoods.
So why I wanted to show you those things first? All of this has nothing to do with Mexicans. Has nothing to do with Muslims, has nothing to do with Somalians, has nothing to do with brown people. It has nothing to do with immigration. But this is what the Republican Party, the people that co-opted the Republican Party, which is the Tea Party, Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, Bill O'Reilly, Breitbart,
Newt
Gingrich, a lot of the idiots still today that go on MSNBC, the New York Times, CNN. This is what they have made impressionable, not just young people, but even older people, think that the reason you can't pay off your student loan debt, the reason that you have such high student loans, yet can really only get a job at Walmart or Burger King or a decent job without health insurance or freelance or fellowship or, a lot of these not livable jobs. The reason that, you have a master's degree but can't actually get a job in what you applied to.
Yeah.
The reason that you got a job with health insurance, but you're paying out of your
taking half your check out of your check
right.
to get that. In addition to, you have to pay a copay when you go see them. You have to spend $1,000 before the 80% actually kicks in. Like, they have a certain amount you have to spend before your insurance even kicks in. Before you even get the benefits of your insurance, you have to spend like $3,000. It depends on the insurance company how much you have to spend. That's what happened to me.
So the reason they have hijacked these people's brains, and the people are not defenseless. It's not like they're just innocent flowers that were brainwashed. They're the ones carrying out these massacres. But they have hijacked these people's brains to think all of the obstacles, all of the economic insecurity, desperation, is because the Mexicans have hijacked your government. The Mexicans have hijacked your country. When in reality, the corporations have hijacked your government. Yeah. It's not the Mexicans' fault that are working in those factories, or the Chinese's faults that are working in those factories, producing the cheaper labor. So people in Ohio or Michigan or Wisconsin or even Texas got laid off from their factory jobs, or, whether it be factory, textiles, carpentry, whatever the case may be. It's not those other countries or the workers that make cheaper labor's fault that you're losing your jobs. It's your politicians' fault. Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com, where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.